Hi, everybody. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk to you about Vedic astrology and the planetary placements today on December 4th, the day of the eclipse. This is the third recording I've made of this particular presentation, so if something seems to be a little bit off, uh, just blame me. I have 30 years of experience as a practicing Vedic astrologer. Uh, I've been the president of the Council of Vedic Astrology, the vice president of the Council of Vedic Astrology, and also I teach at Kepler College, um, American College of Vedic Astrology, and Dyer Academy, among other places. I've also taught at various conferences and various um, webinars, and plan to be teaching at Saptarishi um, webinars at the end of the year. So let's look at, um, and I just finished teaching at our video curriculum. I just want to give people sort of a tip on how to uh, improve their their luck, and that is you can essentially do uh, planetary mantras. You know, essentially very simple mantras are the best ones. So essentially, the mantra for the sun is Om Suryaya Namaha. Mantra for the moon is Om Chandramase Namaha. The mantra for Mars is Om Bhumaya Namaha. The mantra for Mercury is Om Buddhaya Namaha. The mantra for Jupiter is Om Guruvaya Namaha. The mantra for Venus is Om Shukraya Namaha. And the mantra for Saturn is Om Shaniya Namaha. You can also do mantras for um, um, Rahu and Ketu, the north and south of the nose, and those will go Om Rahu Ve Namaha and Om Ketu Ve Namaha. The sun is the light of the heavens. The moon is the reflected light of the heavens. Eclipses essentially obscure those lights, excuse me, and so that understandably causes problems with our egos, number one, our life force, number two, and number three, with our minds. So essentially, when we're looking at eclipses, we're looking at things which cause interferences or interruptions. K2 is, so the sun creates things, the moon reflects things and makes them grow. Um, Mars builds things and builds connections and energy. Um, Mercury helps us discriminate about reality. Jupiter teaches us wisdom or higher knowledge. Venus teaches us practical knowledge and the knowledge of partnerships. And finally, Saturn teaches us how to build permanent structures and also to give. Rahu gives us a little bit beyond giving. Um, it helps us to aspire to greater things in the material world. K2 says, I've had it with the material world. I want to give things, or I want to separate myself from things. So all these planets have a function in the chart. If a person's having problems with relationships, the first planet they normally turn to is Venus, which is connected with long-term relationships. But oftentimes in a chart, and this is why you need an astrologer, it has to do with house placement more so than the planet which rules relationships. So Venus can produce beauty, attractiveness, artistic skill, but it doesn't necessarily mean it'll result in a relationship. Chances are, if you increase those things, it will, but it doesn't necessarily automatically guarantee that. Jupiter can actually be more beneficial towards manifesting relationships if it rules your seventh house, or if some other planet rules your seventh house. You know, you'll find it's more valuable to propitiate that planet and do mantras for that planet. So essentially, mantras for the planet should be done on a waxing moon, or start on a waxing moon on the day that we connected with that planet. So sun is Sunday, moon is Tuesday, I'm sorry, Moon is Monday, Mars is Tuesday, Mercury is Wednesday, Jupiter is Thursday, Venus is Friday, Saturn is Saturday, and Rahu and Ketu can be done either on Saturday and Tuesday, respectively, or on the day of the week in which that particular planet rules. Now I'm going to go and hopefully my screen share will work. Okay, so we have, all right, so hopefully this will work and I won't have any follow-ups. So as I'm looking at this chart, we have a Pisces rising sign. Jupiter's in the 12th house, Saturn's in the 11th house, and Rahu's in the 3rd. Mars is in the 8th in Libra, and Moon, Ketu, and Sun and Mercury are in the 9th. And Scorpio, and Venus is in the 10th. Saturn is the 11th, and Jupiter's in the 12th. Now, two planets are going to change signs this week. One is Mars, and the other one is Venus. So Mars is going to enter Scorpio. He'll be in the same sign with Ketu, so that'll make us more accident prone, more easily blowing up or angry at people, and more quick to violence. It'll also make it far easier for politicians or media to lie over the next, at least over the next week and a half or so. And Venus is moving into the same sign with Saturn after about 2 days. So that'll make us a little bit pessimistic about the future. This is, I think, connected with the Omicron virus. So essentially, I'm seeing signs that people are getting a little bit more depressed or a little bit more down. Based upon when it appeared, the Omicron variant doesn't seem to be very strong. That's not based on science, that's just based on the astrology of it. But I think it'll actually make people more afraid to go out and do things, which is not a good thing. The other thing to keep in mind is that given this chart, the way it's constructed, Jupiter and Moon are in angles, so science will actually improve over the next few months. We'll actually see some increased improvement in science after the eclipse is over, which will be, really within 2 days. We should see some improvement in the economy. Some of the markets tanked yesterday, and again, a lot of the tanking has been over Omicron. I think once we get a more realistic assessment of how far it'll travel and what kind of damage it'll do, we'll feel a lot more relaxed and comfortable. The other thing is, from this chart, Jupiter's in the 12th, so a lot of knowledge will be hidden away from us, at least initially. And Saturn aspects the ascendant, so that makes us a little bit more afraid of what's going to happen. Venus is in the 9th house, is in the 10th house, so that's good, but it's going to enter the 11th house with Saturn, which is not good. And also, in terms of legislation, I think you'll see a lot of what I would call phony deal making going on, and I also think you'll see a lot more suppression on the part of governments around the world, especially in the southern hemisphere. So this is not really a good week. We do have some good things happening. Venus with Saturn is actually a compatible placement. They're happy with each other, but geez, I just get worried that this particular combination is not that great. And we see a lot of planets moving towards a corner. That always makes me a little bit anxious. Again, keep in mind, this is great for planning creative projects. So an eclipse is really wonderful for people who are interested in Tantra or metaphysical subjects or spiritual life. And it's great for creative projects too. So if you're interested in starting any kind of creative project over the next week or so, that's a perfect time to do it. And it's a perfect time to plan for when the planets start to move a little bit more optimistically, which will be within about a month and a half. But basically, we have some problems here. By the way, before I go on, please subscribe. I'm trying to get the membership up, and I am planning on doing a lot more projects connected with astrology, connected with music, connected with politics, literature, etc., etc. And again, as I've told you before, I'm not in a position where I can actually expand the production facilities, but I will be within a couple of months. So that's, and also I am writing a book, starting a school, starting a lot of things. But that'll be in a tiered process. It won't be all at once. Okay, so also if somebody wants a reading, if they want to analyze their chart to improve relationship, to improve marriage, to improve anything, I encourage you to contact me at 508-525-0001 so we can discuss your chart. And I do charge for readings, but I won't provide a price on the screen because I can't do that. And I also take students on individually in addition to the locations I teach. So if you like a one-on-one teacher-student relationship, I'm a pretty good person to go to. So the chart is really not really a mess, but it's kind of clustering towards a conclusion. And I think you'll see the end of a lot of illusion over the next month and a half, especially illusion connected with media resources, and that includes both right and left sides of the spectrum. And basically, I mean, there'll be world tensions, but I don't think any world wars or anything like that. I really don't even think minor outbreaks, or they're going to be extraordinarily regionalized. I'm not seeing anything like that happening. If we can go to the time and space chart. Okay, so you're seeing right now, we have a Venus line running close to the west coast. We have lines running close to Hawaii, but not quite on them. We have, so that Venus line close to the west coast can indicate some water damage or some water issues. I'm going to stop the screen share and pull it up again just to make sure it goes on and it stays on. Oh, I had such a problem with that today. And also, you have a Saturn line running through Texas, California, Texas, Arizona, up through Idaho, up through Montana. So that indicates to me some border issues between Texas and Mexico. Also, we have a Rahu line running up through Louisiana, all the way up into Wisconsin. So that to me implies some problems with immigrant populations or people who consider to be foreign. And I'm using open quotes, foreign. And we also have a Mars line running up through a Rahu line running up through Mexico, and a Mars line running up through the East Coast, connecting with a Sun, Moon, Mercury line. So it looks to me like The Caribbean will experience some problems. Florida will experience some violence. The East Coast will experience some violence and a lot of political infighting. Um, Not a surprise. And there's a Jupiter line running up straight through here as well. Uh, so this descending Rahu line is actually over here. So that indicates some panic in the capital, some deception in the capital too, to be honest with you. And Sun, Moon, and so you'll see some problems in the governments of Santo Domingo and Haiti, and also Panama, and also Western Peru. There's a Venus line running up through Brazil, which indicates fear of diseases. It's running up through Ireland and Scotland. So you'll see some tensions increasing between Scotland and England during this period, and also some panic occurring in Spain and Portugal and Western Africa. So to me, this implies that the virus, there'll be viruses and also uh, some natural disasters occurring in that part of the country, in that part of the world, excuse me. Italy, Germany, France. Germany's been experiencing some massive freezes and some massive deep freezes, and this shows some dissatisfaction with the government in terms of handling it, some dissatisfaction in terms of inflation, and now reach down into Sardinia and North Africa. And we have a cluster of planets locating in Finland and Russia. I don't think we're going to see any activity, though, in terms of Russia attacking Ukraine. There looks like a little bit of violence here, but it doesn't look to me like an attack. And also some potential violence in India. Saturn is in Western India, so that's going to get Western India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. So that part of the world will seem kind of crisis ridden. And Jupiter is running through Eastern India and down through China, but Jupiter's very, very, very weak. And I think you will see some conflicts in China, some conflicts or some dissatisfaction with the government in China. Rahu is passing through India as well. So that, again, like I said, it's a little bit of a panic period. It's Venus is passing by Korea, not normally a bad situation, but it does indicate some slowing down of the economy in Korea and some kind of slowing down of the economy in Japan as well, and in New Guinea and and Australia and a little bit in New Zealand. There is a Mars line running through New Zealand for the first time I've seen, or a Saturn and Mars line running through New Zealand. So they may actually be feeling some economic impact. So the lines I would watch out mostly for are, so there's not blessedly little happening in the Middle East. So Turkey and Eastern Europe look fairly safe, but earlier this morning I was seeing some flood lines around Ankara, so I'm not ruling that out entirely. And I think also from the chart we have some droughts in Western Africa, unfortunately. But the parts I look out most for would be the eastern United States, um, Santo Domingo and Haiti, um, Panama, Peru, Ecuador, um, England, Norway, and this cluster by Finland. That's really kind of worries me. But a lot of government disarray in this part of the world right here. And even threats of people being voted out of government are being recalled. Venus is passing over Iran. That's not so bad, but again, it indicates there'll be some cures coming into Iran and Madagascar. And Saturn moving over, but I am kind of worried about Saturn, Mars um, linking over here. And I am worried about China um, perhaps facing some political discontent. Um, and let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, so there's a Rahu Jupiter line passing over New Zealand. So New Zealand kind of gets hit for really the first time, or the first time in a long time. So if we're looking at charts carefully, the parts of the world, so essentially this is the next couple of months look like they're kind of tense times through around February of 2022. And I think the parts of the world I would worry most about would be not necessarily Ukraine and Russia. I don't think that's actually an issue, but China and the islands off the coast of China and South America and Cuba, because I think those parts of the world have problems. The other part of the world I worry a lot about would be England and Central Europe, especially Germany, Italy, down through Algeria, because we're seeing a cluster of activities coming there, and so we're seeing changes in governments coming to those parts of the world. So that's really not a good thing. It may be a good thing in the long run, but in order to get a good thing coming in, you have to get rid of a bad thing. All right, so let's see now. Let's go over here. Get on this chart, and let's get back into the general areas. Essentially, from the chart we're looking at, the Pisces is its rising sign. It generally indicates problems with losses or problems with economic contraction. And Saturn aspecting the first house is really generally not a good indicator. It also aspects the fifth house of luck and past life credit, and it also aspects 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 10. Also aspects the eighth house, and that's resources from the earth. So again, I think we're going to see more oil shortages, more, that'll probably unstop for a while, but then there'll be supply disruptions, I think, within the next month or so, mainly because of the Mars K2 conjunction, maybe even deliberate sabotage. So that's sort of problematic. The other thing that I look for is in terms of relationships. I've seen the economy slow down a little bit in the United States. That's not it's bad because we're still not really at a good employment figure in the United States. And it's not good for the rest of the world because the United States buys so much from the rest of the world. Supply chain problems will persist really for the next couple of months, to be honest. It's not really something that's going to go away overnight. Um, and they'll come back in the spring. So that's the unfortunate part of the news. The good part of the news is Jupiter in this sign is going to produce what I would call some real medical breakthroughs in terms of both COVID and other diseases over the next 6 months. It'll happen that rapidly, and you'll see a much more effective. I'm I'm thinking an elimination of the crisis mentality by June at the latest. It's possible to be September, but I'm thinking June at the latest, just because of the Saturn changing signs. But again, the economy. Think back to the early aughts, and think about the effect of the 9/11 attack and how slowly the economy recovered from that. And you'll get an image of that. And then think back to the 1970s, which was around. So the Clinton years were essentially a time of economic expansion, right? So if we're thinking about it in those terms, that was great. Everybody was working, but it really wasn't. It was a continuous economic expansion, but it wasn't. It didn't really peak until around 1998 or so. And I think one of the things you're going to see is this will be like a Clinton expansion or a Bush expansion. It won't be like and the Reagan expansion was slow as well. So people look back at those times and they look at big money makers, and the big money making economy was doing very, very well. It took a while for that to seep down into the lower ranges. So it wasn't until the late 1990s that it actually starts to seep into poorer parts of the world. And it wasn't even until 2016, 2017 that we saw, like close to no, close to full employment like we've seen in the late Clinton years. So I think a lot of these things have to be tempered. So we saw a real boost in the economy over the past year or so. But one of the things that economies like is certainty, and if we're getting all these variants coming in, that's going to increase uncertainty, and it really won't be until, like I said, I would say January, February, where we really feel like we have a handle on this, and people will feel comfortable and secure. So let's go back to the chart. And like I said, tensions will be very, very high between now and late January. Yeah, I wish it weren't so, but it is. Also, going back to individual charts, tension in relationships will be very, very strong. It's not really a good time to get involved in a marriage, not a really good time to get involved. Now, again, this is going to vary based upon individual chart, or get into a relationship or make a decision about a relationship, because what we've been doing is we've been dealing with Venus and Sagittarius, which essentially gives us an ideal set of relationships. It gives us essentially these really high standards for relationships, and they're largely met. Venus is going into Saturn sign Capricorn. It'll tend to make relationship life more grounded, more realistic, more boring for a lot of people. Mars is going into the same sign with Ketu. It'll make arguments and explosions and accidents easier to manifest. So it's not all doom and gloom. If you want to do something that's heavily physical or heavily action oriented, it's great. If you want to break off from something or you want to get away from something, it's great for that. But in terms of like forming new alliances, it's going to be difficult. The one saving factor in the chart is Jupiter's presence in Aquarius, which is actually a really good sign placement for Jupiter. And Jupiter right now in the Navamsha chart is in Libra, so that gives a certain amount of impulsiveness in relationships, which we have to guard against a little bit. So you may see a lot of impulsive marriages happening over the next couple of weeks. And that's a bit worrying to me as an astrologer, but that's what it looks like. All right, so let's go to individual charts. Well, let's go to individual signs. And so let's start with Aries. Aries is faced with a variety of challenges. The good thing is, let's start with the good news. The good news is Jupiter's in the 11th house, Saturn's in the 10th house. Career life is strong, and determination is strong. Okay, so it's good for financial gains, it's good for money. Venus is in the 9th house, about to enter the 10th house, good for the luck of your relationship partner in terms of career life. So that's excellent. Mars will be taken away from Libra, so Saturn and Mars will be fighting each other to make sure that everything's perfect. So that's a good thing. However, the Lord of the first house goes to the 8th house. What happens when the Lord of the first house goes to the 8th house? It tends to become suspicious of everybody. And so that combination, which will happen by midweek, will make us a little bit paranoid or a little bit suspicious or a little bit eager to fight with relationship partners. Also, Venus moving into Saturn will take a little bit of a flare out of relationship life. It'll bring more commitment, but it'll take a little bit of the excitement out. So that combined with the potential for arguments makes the situation kind of combustible. Aries still wants to be famous. We have Rahu in the 2nd house. It still wants to be famous. It still wants to achieve that big goal. It'll achieve it in March when Rahu passes into the 1st house. But for now, it'll still be talking about doing things. The 7th house is somewhat afflicted because the Lord of the 7th house will be moving into the 10th house, so career partners will be more interested in career than they will in relationship. All, as a matter of fact, a little bit obviously so. And I think one of the problems you run into with this combination is all this optimism, all these high standards, these high metaphysical standards will tend to dissolve when practical patterns start to interfere with that. So that's my concern for this particular sign. But it is a good career-wise. It is a good time for this sign. But Taurus, so again, instability in relationships really for about 3 months for this sign. For Taurus has the double whammy of all the planets, or most of the planets, clustering in the sign. But it's 1st house Lord going into the 9th house. So it'll make Taurus more practical. There'll be less inclination to divorce or separate until it has all its ducks in a row. But that won't happen really for about another 2 to 3 months when Venus enters this sign. And that's when Venus enters Aquarius, because around December 19th, Venus goes retrograde in the chart, and it'll push it back towards Sagittarius, and it'll also push it back more towards luxurious spending. So this sign has to be careful about financial gaffes. It'll have to be careful about relationship partners spending too much, all that kind of stuff. Jupiter sits in the 10th house, so good for career. Saturn sits in the 9th house, good for career. Gemini. Gemini sits in the Lord of the first house sits in the 6th house, so that this sign will feel like it's surrounded by enemies or people who are jealous of it. It's only going to be in this sign for about another 9 days. Its attention will turn to long-term relationships, but it may change its interest in terms of long-term relationships because of the entry of Mercury into the sign. It may find itself attracted to younger or less serious people because of that Mercury transit. And you'll also tend to see the sun going into the 7th house. So a lot of their energy is going to be focused on, after the 15th, a lot of their energy is going to be focused on relationship life and making sure relationship life is solid. So there'll be a strong desire to get married or to settle down. Again, I'd encourage you not to do that because there are health issues in the chart, and also, at least from the chart, there are some worries about stability and financial security. These aren't serious issues. I think a lot of these will pass within about a month's time, and you'll be able to consider long-term relationships after about a month. But I seriously encourage you not to do that for about a month's time. The other things that are good are, so Mars is in the 6th house, so they'll have to watch their temper. They'll have to watch what are called pitta imbalances. Jupiter's in the 9th house, very good for luck. Saturn's in the 8th. Again, a little bit of slowness in relationship partners' career. Rahu's in the 12th, too much spending. For Cancer's in the Cancer's Lord is the moon is in the 5th house in Scorpio, along with Ketu, Sun, Mercury. So there's some confusion about direction in life for this sign this month, and some feeling of obstacles in relationship. But the person is very, very solidly attached to relationship partners, very committed to relationship partners. And I think, at least from this chart, you'll start to see this sign making plans for the future, especially when Venus enters this particular house after in 2 days. However, Venus will go retrograde, so this time will feel like it's on a yo-yo over the next couple of months, relationship-wise. Career-wise, it'll gain famous friends. It'll gain a lot of solidity career-wise. Jupiter's in the 8th house. Relationship partner will do well career-wise. But again, there'll be worry and jealousy connected with this sign, so just be careful about that. The sun is Leo is fairly well placed in this chart. So we have Jupiter aspecting Leo. The only people who will oppose Leo at this time are people who are afraid of it or jealous of it or who move more slowly than that particular sign. Also, Leo will be more inclined to fight or argue during this month than most months, just mainly because of Mars and being in the same time with K2, and there may be some real blow-up arguments around Christmas time, unfortunately. Venus is in the 5th house. It's about to go to the 6th house, so again, they have to be careful about overconsumption, about too much intoxicants. Jupiter in the 7th, they'll have a lot of relationship opportunities, a lot of possibilities for new relationship partners. Rahu's in the ninth. Their luck will seem to be variable, but it'll be better than most previous months it's experienced. So you'll start to see a change in luck for this sign, which will start to get much stronger in about 2 months' time. And you'll start to see more solidity and work for this sign. For Virgo, Virgo is kind of interesting this month because the Lord of Virgo is in the third house. So this sign is going to be very good at acting and at playing various roles. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It'll actually help increase its connections and its networking, but don't be tempted to lie in order to get ahead. It'll come back to haunt you. The other thing is, with Mars in this sign, the ambition for this sign will be very, very strong. Relationship life, most Virgos will have less interest in relationship life and more interest in improving themselves this month, more interest in writing. And relationships really for Virgo won't mature really until around next spring, but it's basically a good sign placement. Finally, Saturn is aspecting the seventh house, so that's going to delay relationship patterns for this chart really until the spring of next year. That shows up again. Rahu's in the ninth house. It'll mean bosses or superiors will fluctuate or change their mind. Be very difficult to figure out. For Libra, Libra has a lot of focus on home life, a lot of focus on settling down and slowing down. It'll have a lot of money coming in, but also a lot of uncertainty about whether or not it'll be able to keep the money because of the Mars-Ketu conjunction. And also the Venus-Saturn conjunction will make it focus on home matters much more so than relationship life. Also, they have to watch out for health problems connected with their spouse or their spouse's family. This doesn't look like a good time for Libra spouses, especially not after the middle of next week. So they may experience illness or serious illness in the family, or even deaths in the family. So this sign has to be careful about that. The other thing is good potential for love affairs, but this is down a couple of months. And good potential for knowledge. So gains of knowledge for this rising sign, sun sign, will be very, very strong. And also good opportunities for entertainment and to learn about new areas of life. But again, like I said, the temptation to lie is strong for this sign. Don't use it. Use it for creativity. Don't use it to lie. The sign Scorpio has Moon, Sun, Ketu, and then Mars in it. Scorpio and Taurus have had kind of a difficult time of it over the past year and a quarter, mainly because of Rahu and Ketu being in those signs. It's one of those transits which can give separation or breakup. But if you wait it out, the relationship will actually be stronger. I'd encourage most Scorpios and Taurans to wait it out. But this sign, this month, it'll be very tough because Scorpio will be very career-oriented. This week, very career-oriented, very money-oriented. It'll have arguments or be very difficult to placate. And it'll have a tendency to lie or misrepresent itself in terms of relationships. So you have to be really careful this month in particular, because there's just this strong temptation to lie in the chart. Also to go into hiding. Saturn is in the third house, so a lot of ambition, a lot of practical growth. And Jupiter's in the fourth house, so a lot of focus on home life. So home life will be happy, and children will be happy from this chart. Rahu's in the seventh house. We've already spoken about that. Relationship partner seems bored or anxious or wanting to get out of the situation. All right. So let's go to Sagittarius. Sagittarius has Saturn in the second house. The Lord of the first house is in the third house. And the Lord of the fourth house is in the third house. So there's a strong desire for learning and self-advancement. Venus and Saturn in the same sign will actually help this sign gain some monetary advancement. But they'll have to be careful about illnesses or problems with health over the next few months. So just be careful of that. Jupiter sits in the third house, aspects the ninth house, good for luck for the sign. And Pisces, and so this is generally a good chart. Mars is in the 11th house going to the 12th. So again, be careful about being too quick to run into relationships. Saturn sits in the first house for Capricorn. This is a naturally conservative sign. One of the things I watch out for would be getting too infatuated with somebody too quickly. If somebody starts to show you they're nice, wait for a few weeks, see if it lasts. And also, money should start to roll into the sign a little bit more quickly over the next few weeks. Rahu's in the fifth house. Children will be problematic. Mars is in the 10th house, is in the 11th house. Good gains for real estate and financial areas. And Saturn is in the first. So this sign will continue to dominate. This will give a lot of authority to governments around the world. Aquarius has a generally good chart. There's a lot of career focus for Aquarius. But again, like I said, there's a tendency to overblow or over exaggerate one's importance. Venus goes into the 12th house. It'll at least be able to save more money over the next few months. Rahu's in the fourth, so there's still some anxiety or concern over home matters. Mars moves from the 9th to the 10th house, so career life will be extremely strong for the sign. A lot of success, but again, as Aquarius has for the past few months, this particular sign will have problems in terms of getting recognition for work. That'll pass after March of next year. And again, the sign has to be really careful about risking everything for job matters, especially after December 19th. December 19th to the end of January will be very precarious career-wise for this sign. For Pisces, Pisces has Rahu in the third house, Jupiter in the 12th, Saturn in the 11th. So this will make this sign kind of risk averse. It'll want to stay out of the limelight. Venus moves from the 10th to the 11th, so financial gains are there, certainly. Moon, Sun, K2, Mercury are in the 9th house, so supervisors will be very tough to figure out and rather aggressive, rather forceful, and very moody. So there's something to be a little bit cautious about in dealing with supervisors or with superiors or with the government. But Rahu's in the third house. That's good. So it gives a lot of ambition to the sign. K2's in the 9th. It can actually bolster the sign. It'll be along with and it'll create a Raj Yoga for this chart. So that's actually good. A creative dana yoga. So it'll actually be good for money, especially through relationship partners and through people connected with other businesses that this sign is involved in. So this is overall not a bad chart for Pisces. Again, the thing that I'd encourage people to keep in mind is the potential for accidents, the potential for shortness of temper, the potential for sadness or boredom with relationships, the potential for loss of energy. These can be switched around and turned into discipline, study, self-examination, setting a good pathway for the future, but not making sudden, bold moves, except for certain signs. And those signs would essentially be um, Sag, Scorpio, but not in relationships. And I would say to a lesser extent, Virgo can make, they can make some pretty uh, good moves. But again, relationships, no, I wouldn't recommend any sign either get engaged or get married during this period. I waited at least until February. Um, and can certainly do work projects together. That's really not out of the question. And if we look at the Navamsha chart, I just want to go into this a little bit as well. The Navamsha chart is a chart I don't always look at, but this is connected with relationships. So we have Ketu in the first house and Rahu in the seventh house. This tends to give, and Jupiter and Venus exchange signs. So this gives the illusion that the person's found the ideal mate. They found the ideal person. But that person will lead them to loss because the 12th Lord is in the fourth house. It's in Venus's ruler. It will lead to lies because Mars aspects Mercury and Moon, and it will lead them to sadness because Saturn aspects the third house of desires and ambitions. So again, this is a time to be cautious, extremely cautious in relationships, and even in partnerships. So there's a tendency to be attracted to famous or unavailable people, and that's fine. But at the same time, be very, very careful who you get involved with. Be very, very careful about changing streams. Some of you will be forced into changing work situations, I think, especially um, in between December and late January because of Venus's position in the chart. But that would really more connect with Aquarius and Capricorn signs. The other signs are sort of like left out of that particular, and maybe Leo, but the other signs are sort of like left out of that. Also, people will hear a great deal from people they haven't heard from in a long time. That's one of the indications of a Venus retrograde and a Venus Saturn conjunction. So you'll be thinking a lot about the past and thinking a lot about what happened to you in previous um, experiences on this planet. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is. It's not encouraging you to repeat your mistakes. It's encouraging you to learn from what you've gone through before. So it's kind of a tense time. But again, it's also a great opportunity to strengthen yourself. It's a great opportunity to reach for new goals and new dreams, but not to tie your dreams to any particular person. That's one of the things I'm encouraging you not to do. Um, so you can say maybe set up an ideal image of yourself for what kind of person you'd like to be with, but don't target anybody right now because the target's inclined to be a little bit off center. Okay, so that's about it. Hopefully, third time's the charm, and this captured the chart all the way through. Whew. This has been tough, and hopefully everyone stays well. This will be a little bit shorter than other broadcasts I've done, but I can only repeat myself so many times before I start to get tired of the sound of my own voice. So again, more exciting things coming. Book, school, more stuff, more videos, more collaborations, collaborations with Sagittarius Astrology, more online engagements. So there's more stuff coming, more professional surroundings. So I encourage you to subscribe. There's going to be a lot more fun coming down the road. And part of there was an ancient Chinese curse saying, may you be born in interesting times. These are interesting times, but they're good because they help us sift through the falsehood to get to the reality. Okay? All right. So without further ado, I'll bid you good day and hope you have a blessed week. And hopefully this will be the last time I have to do this. Thank you and namaste. This was a tough week. Goodbye, everyone. Namaste. God bless you all.